to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me I got a full house. Welcome, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, guys?
On today's podcast, we're going to be going over what went down this past weekend in the Premier League and in the FA Cup, and equally as important, what's to come. Before we get into it, though, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. But let's get straight into the first action that actually didn't take place over the weekend, Mac. This was a Friday night game for us here in Canada. Arsenal 3, Southampton 3. A game that I'm going to be quite completely honest, I expected Arsenal to come out strong and completely steamroll Southampton. It wasn't the case, though. Southampton came out strong. I wouldn't say very, very strong because there were some errors there, but Mac, walk us through how you saw this game.
So I saw this game as kind of a hiccup towards the beginning where Arsenal very early on made a couple of key mistakes, and that's what they were mistakes. They kind of shot themselves in the foot. I don't think Southampton played necessarily well overall kind of throughout the whole portion of the game. Alcaraz, one of the two players that were playing up front along with Theo Walcott for Southampton was probably the only player I would argue that played very, very well for Southampton for large stretches of the game, which for some strange reason led to him being taken off at halftime, which was very confounding. Overall, the performance to start off in the first 14 minutes as poor as you can be, and even to after dragging back a goal to make it 2-1, Arsenal again made a mistake, and this time it was Zinchenko off a corner in the second half. Overall, poor performance, kind of poor mentality. At this exact same time, phenomenal recovery. It seemed like they kind of lost the life of their position in league, the faith that they had playing. Just within the last 20 minutes, I would argue, after conceding that third goal, were changed, kind of breathed life back into themselves as a team in terms of their philosophy, how well they can play together, and overall, definitely in a position now where their destiny is still in their own hands, but they have to look back at some points and be like, if we end up not winning the Premier League season, these are the games that really cost them, and this one in particular for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Not the greatest start, but I love how you pointed out the sort of will to fight back. And this is a constant theme, Joe, that we've seen throughout the season. You know, obviously, Reece Nelson's goal late, I think it was against Bournemouth at the Emirates, stands out. In the big context, I think, Andrew, you would agree that points dropped, but still a tie and not a loss. Gio, I guess, walk us through how you see them being able to come back and even almost win it at the end, and sort of that mentality that, you know, it's a different season this year. There's still a possibility, like Max said, and there's all to fight for. What are your thoughts?
I mean, all in all, like, we've seen it before. We've seen them dig themselves out of holes, and it just shows that when they turn it on and they are able to control the tempo of the game with their possession, and them dominating the midfield, that they can come back from a game at any given time. But points dropped means exactly what it means. Is points dropped, and you have to build a lead on City, especially when it comes down to you playing them for a second time, coming up very shortly. These mistakes, they do pile up, and it's very evident that they are somewhat feeling the pressure. Even the last draw that they had, I think that's what it kind of seemed like in this game. They weren't really too into it to start early. I think they just thought Southampton were gonna kind of bend and fold and kind of let them have their way with them, but they really didn't. And I think they were pressing a little too high early on and kind of gave Southampton that space to run in behind. So, look, they're a good team. Again, it's going to come down to, especially when it comes down to Saka getting the ball early and often and really letting him get comfortable in the game for him to attack, cross balls in, like he did to Martinelli, to get them back into it. That's what he's capable of. So I think in any game going forward, I think they just really have to do what works. Kind of like how we say for Pep, don't try and do too much. Don't try to do too much, like, new things in terms of your backline. Just do what you know and things tend to work out. So same thing for Arsenal. Do what you know. Let Odegaard control the midfield. Let Partey and let Xhaka kind of make those tough tackles, and then give the ball to Saka and let him destroy that side of the wing. Cross balls in, and look, you see the results that they do produce. So yeah, it's going to be tough, especially coming up and having to face such a City side at this point.
Yeah, well, let's dive straight into that. Well, before we mention it, City were in action this past weekend, but not in the Premier League. They did feature in the FA Cup semifinal against Sheffield United. Rotated a lot of their players. And eventually got a 3-0 win with Riyad Mahrez getting a hat trick. Mac, it is interesting to note Sergio Gomez started at the back for Man City, Akanji, Laporte, and Kyle Walker. Do you see potentially there a weakness in the back, like Joe mentioned, that could be explored by Saka and Arsenal's, I think if I heard it correctly, top goal scorer this season, Gabriel Martinelli, in this upcoming match? How do you see this taking place?
So those players that you listed, I would be surprised if all of them, if any of them really start against the Arsenal team. I wouldn't be surprised if they shift back over into kind of what they've done prior to that matchup, because it definitely was a game that they expected to win and fairly comfortably, and that's what they did against Sheffield United. More so, I wouldn't be surprised, aside from Ake, who is a doubt for the game, you probably would have a kind of more of a back four of maybe Laporte, Akanji, Stones, and Diaz. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the back four, to which then my question would be is that Arsenal have the two high-scoring wingers in the Premier League, and combined, of course, meaning that they score the most amount of goals from crosses. So just like going into the Southampton game, I wouldn't be surprised if their idea is how many times can we isolate either Martinelli or Saka against either one of the players that are going to play as a wide back but are traditionally center backs. How can we be able to get them on one-on-one situations? Because City generally do a very good job of denying you access into their half, so you can't get into those positions. So the key part won't be, I feel like won't be as clinical when they get there, because every single time I feel like they do get there, they should almost always see some joy. It's about how many times can they reach that phase of the pitch? How many times can they break down the midfield, make that high press of City, and be able to get into that final third where they can have their best players show their quality. I think that's going to be the key part in that matchup. So I'm not saying that they're those players that you mentioned, Ray, not many of them are going to play, because that's generally when the bigger matchups they haven't. So I'll be surprised if they do. And this is how I feel like Arsenal, if they are able to break down that midfield, get into that final third, they can definitely be a team that causes a lot of problem for that Manchester City team.
Okay, and on the flip side, Gio, I think, Mac, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, Saliba is still a doubt for this upcoming game. And we know Man City played this past weekend. Haaland, I think, was on the pitch when Man City were awarded a penalty kick. Riyad Mahrez stepped up and converted it. But do we think that's, Gio, do we think Pep's just saving Haaland for Arsenal, or was there something more to this? How do you see this sort of new back line that unfortunately hasn't been able to keep a clean sheet since Rob Holding has stepped in for Arsenal, dealing with Haaland on his form at 32 goals in the Premier League this season?
I think it simply doesn't bode well for them. One, I get it; they have size. In terms of them, I mean Arsenal. They do have size in the back, but here you have Erling Haaland, so you match size with size. And now it comes down to athleticism. I'm gonna get athleticism to Erling Haaland. Speed, I give it to Haaland as well. So if they start anything like they did against Southampton and kind of push up a little too high, and then allow kind of like KDB or Silva to feed a ball through to Haaland and let him go on a run, that's not going to bode well for Arsenal at all. So I think they need to be very calm. Don't stray too far away from your game, but definitely focus more on the defensive end on this one. If you can sneak a draw and then, or for matter, win it late against City, which is very possible. They have won late games, so don't count them out. Then I think that should be the game plan. Again, you do have to let Saka take his chances out there, but I think this should be mainly a more defensively focused game to start off. And then once City do kind of get frustrated in terms of having to struggling to score goals against a more low-sitting team in a low block, then that's when the field's going to open up for you. So they have to be very patient. It'll probably end 0-0 first half, and most of the scoring, if it does come, will be in the second half.
Ooh, very interesting. I guess same question to you, Mac, but it's interesting because both teams have proven last season and this season, well, last season more so for, and I guess this season for City, the Aston Villa game, obviously, when they were down last game of the season, and they were able to come back and win the title. And then even earlier when Spurs were up, I think at the Etihad in the first half, and then Man City just came out the second half to just roll them over. Is that an approach you think Arsenal might look into? Just not going at City full throttle at the beginning, and then waiting to pick their moments, especially because Arsenal not at home, and you're facing a team away from home. City in the form that they're in, you just want to be cautious at the back and keep things tight. What do you think, Matt?
So there's been a lot of talk about what you see online on Twitter and the Twitter threads, different analysts suggesting that Arsenal should change their system, potentially have Tierney come in and kind of play as a central back three with two wing backs with Zinchenko or Ben White playing there, or potentially even moving Rob Holding out and dropping kind of more of a traditional winger into kind of a wing back position. Necessarily, I don't feel like either of those or any of those things will actually happen, just given how Arteta has been kind of sticking to his philosophy, and just to have a one-game system change where every other game for this entire Premier League season and in all competitions in the Europa League, FA Cup, Carabao Cup, win, lose or draw, they have stuck to their guns of how they want to be able to kind of play football. So I think it might be too much of a shock for the players, like, oh, we're going to completely change our philosophy of how we want to be able to play, because even at moments where there are players that are not natural at position, probably the most common example is Tierney, where you're generally not comfortable as Zinchenko dropping into midfield to play with the ball. But if you're going to play, that's what you're going to do. So I would be very surprised if they see more of a shift. I do, though, disagree with you in terms of kind of the goal threat. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think this is going to be a lot of back-and-forth action, because both of the teams, they try to play a very similar philosophy in terms of how they want to press, and relying more so on three defenders to do most of the defending, and the kind of a back three in terms of a counter. And I would argue that's probably the weakest spots at why for both of those teams in those positions, is that if you have, just as you mentioned, Gio, a Holland, KDB break, or with potentially a Mahrez or Jack Grealish one-on-one, okay, we're going to expect quite a few of those situations to happen, and more times than not, they're going to score. Vice versa for Arsenal and the other way. So it's more about how those teams, I feel like, can break down the other team's press to see who's going to win that midfield battle. And that's why I think the key omission from this previous game for Southampton, and I know both of you will be very surprised me bringing up his name, is that Granit Xhaka did not play. And if he's a miss as well for this against Manchester City, I think that's where you can see Arsenal, instead of going to a game where they can kind of potentially win that midfield battle, he right now, Fabio Vieira, is a little bit soft in those challenges and probably can't keep up the pace and quality as that Manchester City midfield. So I think even more so in terms of any rotation change, I think they need to bring him back if they have a chance of competing in that midfield and kind of holding back the high capable City attack.
Yeah, I've also seen a couple of things about ways Arsenal can change their lineup, maybe play Ben White more in a center back role just for his distribution. It's too much. I think it's too much because yes, it is one game that could really decide the title, but you're switching so much just for one game. I think rather the approach should be sticking to what you know and seeing if you can outwork the City team in a game where they've been there before. They played in games where they must win, and Arsenal just could hit them with some more positive energy and instances where Man City are not as effective in the transition. Those instances, I think Gio pointed out, could be the vital positions. Interesting to note as well for the Bayern games, Bernardo Silva started both on the right wing position. I'll be interested to see who they start in this game, because Riyad Mahrez, as I mentioned, he got a hat trick in that FA Cup game, and just coming into a game really not having played as much and scoring a hat trick, you really make a name make a case for yourself to start this game. But we all know Pep rotates his team. He will have other plans, and definitely he may be downplaying this game. But we all know Pep would have been fantasizing about this game for weeks to come, as we were, Gio, pretty much fantasizing about this game because of what it means. And as it stands, Arsenal have 32 games played, 75 points. City have 30 games played and are sitting on 70 points. And so they do win both games in hand. They are a point above Arsenal. And obviously, this one is a big decider. So lastly, to wrap up this part, Gio, it's tough to predict, but I'm going to have to ask you, can you predict the result or what will happen in this game?
Yes, I will pick the favors to be the title winners, and that's going to be Man City, 2-1.
Okay, 2-1. I see that. Mac, would you care to agree, disagree, or throw in a whole different prediction?
I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game. I think both defenses have the chance to leak goals. I think there's probably three different scenarios that can play out here. Is where either City absolutely roll Arsenal. I think there is a small potential of that happening, and you're maybe looking at a 3-0 win where Arsenal just can't get out and be able to play. I see teams are both being able to go at it, and the only way Arsenal win is if they can kind of, in some ways, it might be weird, watching a lot of the NBA playoffs, is where the only chance is really to outscore, potentially, I feel like, this Manchester City team. So I'm going to stick in the middle of those two predictions and go with a tie, and I'm going to go with a 3-3 tie. I think it's going to be an electric game, similar a lot of the ways to the last year game that I visited, the 2-2 result, Manchester City, Liverpool at Manchester City. An atmosphere like that where there's going to be a lot of opportunities for both teams. The only difference I feel like between this and that game is where both teams are playing almost an identical system versus there were polar opposites in that fixture. So I think this could go very high scoring, and I would prefer a tie than a loss. So the Arsenal have a chance. Hopefully City drop points, to be honest. So that's why I'm going with that.
Of course. And personally as well, with Arsenal, with their lead, I thought, it would be interesting if City did get the win to pull it back. But with the recent results that Arsenal have, I am hoping for a tie just to give us some more drama towards the end of the season and see how those games in hand, if they catch up to City. But realistically, with what we mentioned, injuries and just the wrong luck of form for Arsenal in this game. In the last couple of games, I do lean more so towards City. So I do agree with both of you. I do want a tie, but I do think City will come out victorious in this game. But hey, that's all to be played for, and we'll definitely be reviewing that game later this week. But let's take a quick break here, boys, and then we'll be back with some more Premier League talk. So stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We're going to continue our podcast, just discussing more Premier League action from this past weekend. Big game for the battle for the top four. Newcastle Spurs, and the result was Newcastle 6, Spurs 1. Gio, a game where we were interested to see the result, but this was very, very surprising to say the least. How did you see this game take place?
I was honestly expecting a goal, sort of like a goal fest, but more balanced of a goal fest.
Fair, yeah.
Harry Kane being on the other side of the pitch. Sonny, who's scored in a few games now, like looking to get back into form. But no, it was all Newcastle all game. And you know what? I couldn't have been happier, to be quite honest. I think it was 5-0 going into the second half. And at that point, it was just... it was almost sad at one point. Like, these guys don't look like... Well, they didn't look like they were in it from the very beginning. And if this is what peak Newcastle is, in terms of, like, pure confidence... And keep in mind, Almiron's just coming back from an injury, so he hasn't been playing the max minutes, and that's not the best Almiron. That's not the best version of Almiron that we've seen. So, if they have Almiron firing on all cylinders and Isaac firing on all cylinders, this team is potent. And it just goes to show it is very potent because they have other guys apart from their front two or front three that can score. You have Murphy, and then you have even Joe Linton chipping in, and then it's just goals after goal after goal. So, and sorry to add one more, Callum Wilson, who's definitely a well-known scorer, being on England and everything. So this Newcastle team is scary, but it was a barn burner for Newcastle, and Spurs were in the depths of it, and I couldn't be happier.
Exactly. What can we say? You said they were Newcastle were up 5-0 before half. They were actually 5-0 up inside 22 minutes, and that just goes to show how it went. Credit definitely to Newcastle, but we're all going to focus a lot on how bad Spurs were. And to start off with, Stellini went to a back four with Pedro Porro and Perisic as either right back and left back, and Romero and Dyer at center back pairing, when they've been playing a back five throughout the whole season. And to change it in such a big game, and we just discussed Arsenal City and potential ways that Arsenal could line up and maybe change things. This is potentially what could happen, and exactly what happened for Newcastle. They just went to town on a new formation and a team that didn't look like, first of all, they knew how to play with each other, and second of all, they didn't look like they were in to win this game, a must win for the top four qualification. Mac, your thoughts?
So this result, I think, was probably the worst result I've seen Spurs have in quite a long time. Even a club that we I would argue this result from Spurs is worse than any individual Chelsea game that we've seen thus far this year, if you think about it just on an individual game basis, because this set them back. Even if you go in and you lose this game, that's respectable if you put in a good effort. Because this Newcastle team, as we know now, is real. They're in a position to, in all likelihood, and I think they're odds-on third favorite to finish within the top four. So they should be returning to the Champions League. So this is a quality side. So if you go into this game, you lose, completely acceptable. But just watching a lot of fan reactions, like live reactions, compilations of Spurs fans watching that game, and I'd be like, I can't believe it's 5. And my favorite one, forgot the Englishman's name, but he with the 5th goal went in, and because he was still upset about the 4th goal because it was literally like 90 seconds later, he's like, was that a replay from the 4th goal or is that a 50th goal? Because I don't know what the hell is going on here. He was so astounded because this Newcastle took a 5-0 lead within 21 minutes, as Ray mentioned. That's the second earliest a side has done so in Premier League history. The earliest actually being Man City versus Watford in 2019, and that took 18 minutes. But I want to repeat, that was Watford. This is Tottenham, right? So just think of how poor you have to be. In regards to the system change, as Ray, you had mentioned, Pedro Porro is generally considered a good offensive wing back, and Perisic is a winger. So to play them as traditional fullbacks against a team that, okay, yes, they have struggled to put goals on the board thus far this season. So that thought possibly, we can be more attacking. We want to come out and show intent. But that's just a lack of understanding of how your team, who your players are on that team. And thankfully, Stellini has left the club, because they shouldn't just be looking to hire Antonio Conte's friend to be able to do this job as an idea. It's like, this is a good band-aid in the interim, right? No, they need a culture shift. They need a change of complete system. And this wasn't it. And I'm glad that that change has occurred, and hopefully Spurs can continue to move forward, because as we talked about going into this game, this was back-to-back must-win games. And at the very least, they needed to come out with 4 points to have a good, solid chance to be able to make it into the top 4, because they're one of the teams that played most of the Premier League games. They are 32 games played, so they only have 6 games left, and still an uphill battle to climb against 2 teams above them. So this was poor all around. And so poor that their captain was subbed at halftime, Hugo Lloris. Fraser Forster came on, and in his post-game interview, he's like, I think we should apologize. What do you mean you think? Let me tell you. Let me know. If you think, I'll confirm it for you. You should. It should be happening, because that was. I'm trying not to swear so much. Trying to, it's just, I want to so much right now, but this is as poor as you can get from a team of the expectations that we should have. So overall, okay. And to reiterate, I think this is probably the worst performance in the Premier League this season. I know we talked a lot about Chelsea. Even the Manchester United result against Liverpool, was that 7-0? 7-0, yeah.
7.
I would argue this was worse. I would argue this was worse than that because there was still hope prior to that for Man U, and there's hope post that for Man U. There was nothing in between for Tottenham whatsoever. So this is bad.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Even for the Man U game, Liverpool only up 1-0 at half. It was just a obviously what happened in the second half. But to start off this game the way it did, Gio, those 11 players on the pitch, and I shared that post by that Spurs fan talking about Spurs play. Essentially, he's upset that Spurs made changes because those 11 players should be kept on the pitch as punishment for how bad they're playing. Of course, like Mac mentioned, Hugo Lloris went off at halftime, quote unquote injury, but also Sarr came off after 23 minutes for Davinson Sanchez at center back, and then did change the back into a back three. But that's Davinson Sanchez, who in the previous game, the fans booed off the pitch because of his performance. So, Gio, what are your thoughts about sort of that performance from those 11 players, lack of leadership? What's going on with Spurs?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree wholeheartedly that those 11 players that started the game should definitely have stayed on the game. Stayed in the game and, and taken, sort of the abuse, the punishment. You have to take it on the chin. You guys came out as a group and you guys didn't put on a performance that even for any soccer team would be acceptable. And this is a difference between the leadership on say like bigger clubs. We saw it after the second goal was scored by Southampton. You saw Zinchenko screaming at the guys to get in the middle of the pitch. Let's talk about it. Let's hash it out right now. Let's regain our focus and focus on the game. 2-0 is nothing in the first 2 to 3 minutes of the game. There's still 87 minutes to play, right? Didn't see much of that. Didn't see any of that, to be honest. There were a lot of hanging heads. Players looking at one another, expecting one person to say something. Maybe you expect it from your captain Hugo Lloris. Maybe you expect it from your best offensively gifted player Harry Kane. Nothing. So to me, this is definitely a club that needs a culture change, and for a manager to bring, I don't think it's going to be a manager problem. I don't think it's going to be maybe even a player problem. It's a club problem that stems from ownership. So, if he's okay with just driving in revenue, that's fine. But, you're going to continue to have tough years coming if you guys keep playing like this. So, and to me, the sacking of an interim manager is it's where it's gotten to, which is shocking. He's interim for a reason. He's not expected to stay long. So instead you're going to put Ryan Mason, who's really isn't going to change the club in any way, that he's going to be a spot filler and, potentially could get worse. So there's no guarantee that Ryan Mason's not going to get shellacked up and down the pitch by another club. So, hey, good luck to Ryan Mason, but, the fact that it's come down to firing an interim manager and kind of putting blame on the interim manager has shown you where this club has gone from the start of the season now down to near the end of the season. Some would argue it's as bad as Chelsea. It's not as bad as Chelsea, but it's damn near getting close to there. So Chelsea fans, you have hope.
Hey, you know what? That's a question that I wanted to ask you guys, but I'll move on to that a little later. Mac, great points from Gio there regarding sort of the way these players came out on the pitch. I'm not even going to say play because obviously we know the result. They obviously didn't play for themselves, and even though Kane got his goal, he's up to, I think, 26 goals in the season, 24 in the Premier League. He's going to give you that, but what really can you expect for the rest of the team? And Mac, do you think this is Spurs waving the white flag now, sort of giving up their hopes, considering you did mention they have 6 games left, quite crucial games coming up as well, playing teams in and around that top 4 position. How do you see them really approaching these games? Do you think they should go and try to hire a manager for the remaining games? Just stick with Ryan Mason? What do you do at this point?
So I in my opinion, they obviously still have to go for it. They have tough games coming up because they have to play now after Newcastle. It was Manchester United, then Liverpool, and then Crystal Palace, Aston Villa, Brentford, and Leeds. I would argue maybe only the Leeds is a guaranteed 3 points in some ways. Every other game is either kind of a derby, facing another Big Six team, or a team on the rise like Aston Villa. So you're in a very, very tough position in terms of the league matches that you have to play. I think sticking with Ryan Mason is probably a good PR move because he's well loved within the club, given kind of what he meant to, kind of the tragedy that happened to him, how he still tries to stay around and be part of the team and try to provide some sort of support. So I think that at least is initial first good step. The question being is that can they kind of build from there and see what a progress they can make. Obviously, kind of the thing that cures everything is picking up 3 points. So if they go out and win against Manchester United, Ryan Mason's first game as the kind of the lead manager there in the interim until the end of the season, that's going to garner a lot of kind of goodwill towards him and the team and give them some support, some belief that they can kind of do something for the rest of the season. I think it's fairly tough, like I said, given the games played. But in some ways, they can still set themselves up to be at least in a good position exiting the season if they have a strong finish here. Of course, it's tough fixtures. They still have all to play for. But hopefully Mason there, because he actually played with a lot of the current Spurs players that are there, both with Hugo Lloris, with Harry Kane, with Son. He was on the same team as them. So they should have some sort of connection. And if they're not willing to play for themselves and the future of their club, because there's been a lot of talk of them leaving on, they should be doing it for him. So I think they still have some hope there. And it should be a summer decision. If you asked me though a couple of weeks ago who would have been the interim manager to get fired first, Frank Lampard or Stellini, I would have got Frank Lampard. Still could happen. It would be amazing and hilarious. Because Chelsea couldn't play this weekend, therefore they couldn't lose, so they were the biggest winners. You know that meme of the guy pointing to his head. They know. So it'll be interesting to see what these next matches fold out for the Spurs team, but they have a small window. They could still potentially do something special for someone that a lot of the people in the club care about. So hopefully they're able to do that.
Yeah, and exactly it. Chelsea didn't play this weekend, and so maybe that's because of what happened that they're kind of out of the spotlight. But it's tough. I think the way this season could end for Spurs, and I'm going to pat myself on the back here for predicting a Spurs downfall, I think it's going to be a very, very bad ending for Spurs, given the fact that, like you just said, there's big games to play for, and their team morale is at an all-time low. That being said, though, I did want to quickly mention, Gio, the Newcastle performance. Isak with 2 goals, Jacob Murphy with a banger. And can we just have a moment for that Joe Willock, former Arsenal player Joe Willock, outside the foot pass to Isak for that? I think it was the 3rd goal, if I'm not mistaken. Well,
Third
man,
goal, yeah.
that how what do you think happened at halftime when they went in that Newcastle changing room? Do you think you just chilling, laughing, taking a break, getting a massage? What do you think happened there?
They wanted to get right back on the pitch and score more realistically.
Fair.
They said, "Hey guys, let's not stop this. Can we just cut the break short? Let's go out there and thrash these guys." And absolutely rightfully so, because hey, if you're not going to show the other team any type of respect, then hey, you might as well not be there. And again, I couldn't agree with that tweet more. Keep those guys on and make them learn their lesson some way.
Yeah, well, I guess this is pretty much it for this game. We're going to take one last break here, guys, and then we'll be back touching on the remaining FA Cup semifinal that took place this last weekend and what's to come for the next week. So stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We're going to finish off the podcast discussing the other semifinal for the FA Cup that took place this weekend. Man U null, Brighton null, but United advance on penalty kicks. Gio, very, very intense match between these two. Man U have all of these back-to-back games that have so much riding on it. How was your take on this game?
Definitely an ass clencher, this one, boys. But honestly, it was definitely more of a battle of which goalkeeper was going to make that mistake first. I thought Brighton, from the free kicks, from the shots outside the box, they looked like the more dangerous squad. And based on more recent results, I think they're a team of a higher confidence level coming into this game. McAllister had an early chance from a free kick early on, but just missed the net. And shots from outside the box where they had to scramble and make that follow up save, and those were close too. So all in all, I think it was a good matchup that ended in a 0-0 draw. But again, we can see how the confidence has dropped for Man U, especially from even the simpler passes from, say, like an Ericsson or a Casemiro. They just don't seem as crisp. They don't seem like they're as cohesive as they were just even a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, no, it just didn't look too great. And this is the thing with Man U, is that once the offense becomes kind of more stagnant, they struggle and kind of look to others to try and create something, and try to do too much solo, which kind of just bunches up the game, slows the game down, which isn't really what they want. They want to be played out in that open space and really dominate with their speed and to attack on the counter. So when you get the ball one-on-one, if nobody else is making those runs and you're just trying to cut in or cut out, you're not really going to create many chances, and especially not at the level that they're playing at. You're not really going to create too many chances. So definitely frustrating to see on the Man U fan standpoint, but all in all, it was a good game. And if you're a neutral, that went to penalties, which is always fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Penalties. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Mac, just interesting to note, the backline that Man U started with included 3 traditional wide backs. Harry Maguire obviously admitted, Varane and Lisandro Martinez out with injury. So we saw Luke Shaw and Lindelof pair up as center backs. And I'm gonna be honest, I gotta give a lot of credit to Erik ten Hag. Off the back of that poor result in the Europa League against Sevilla, it would have been very easy for him to, approach this game in a much, much more negative way. But I thought Shaw coming on to play an important role and sort of preventing those balls going into the Encizos and the Welbecks of Brighton was a great job tactically by Ten Hag, and then getting his team to, I think, perform even better than they did in the must-win Europa League game. Does show something. There's definitely a sign of at least more cohesive approach to this game. Whereas, I'm gonna be completely honest, if you saw maybe Ole Gunnar Solskjaer last year in this type of game, I don't think that same result would have come. So I gotta give props to Ten Hag, back-to-back games to really make or break their season, and the result went Man U's way, and that's just how it goes. Mac, what were your thoughts for this game?
I take it a little bit of a different perspective from you, because I do think actually Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, if he was the manager, they wouldn't have been as much different in terms of performance. This team was really heavily outpossessed. Brighton had 61% possession, and that was Manchester United starting with their, if all argument's sakes, their first choice midfield with Ericsson, Casemiro, and Bruno Fernandes. So you would have expected, or maybe you hoped, that on possession in the midfield, they could have done a little bit more in terms of breaking up possession for Brighton, trying to get the Manchester United players out and about. But that wasn't the case. Brighton were that good. And I think not to say that negatively about Manchester United, because I think that against most teams, they're able to do that. It's more so a credit to Brighton, how well this team has progressed, how well they can play. In regards to the structural change of moving Shaw into center back, I think that was... If it gave truth serum to Ten Hag, he would have wanted to be able to do that even in previous weeks as well, because he doesn't. If you're talking about the antithesis of a center back of what he wants to play in the system, it's Harry Maguire. So it's unfortunate he was in the position that he kind of had to play in previously, where Shaw is a little bit more comfortable with the ball. So potentially you have the opportunity to break out, but it really wasn't there in this individual game. I would argue there wasn't as many clear-cut opportunities for either team. There wasn't a final third masterclass. There were a couple of nice moments from players like Matoma or even Martial at the beginning. Players like that where you could have seen some chances of brilliance, but nothing could come off, and there wasn't, as Gio highlighted, that big mistake. So even though it's a 0-0 game, it was exciting, but there wasn't really any large moments that stand out to me. Until you, of course, go to the penalty shootout. So overall, I do take a lot more credit from Brighton from this game, considering how well they've played. And I would argue if you play that game 10 times, Brighton probably wins 6, maybe 7 of them, just given how well they play. But on the other side of the coin, you could look at it as this is a huge success for Ten Hag. Having the Carabao Cup trophy and even going to the final playing Manchester City, in all likelihood, we'll say is probably the underdogs going into that fixture. Even though Manchester City, in all likelihood, this is if they rank their importance of competition, this is clearly number 3 as of right now. This is a phenomenal success and something that he can go to the board and be like, hey, this is a template of something. Even when I don't have these players, I need something more if you want to be able to take that next step. And he could be very much in a position as where, funny enough, Liverpool were last year, where if you're winning both cups, maybe you do get that financing to be able to help bring in players into the squad. So I think I think this is key for Ten Hag in terms of their long-term approach of the belief the fans have in him, the board a belief how will have in him of how he can kind of edge out these results. So just imagine if he has more quality in his team and what he could be able to do there. So even though, like I said, individual matchup, I take a lot of credit out for Brighton. Long-term, this was a huge success for Manchester United.
Yeah, no, for sure. I wanted to as well. Great thing that you pointed out Brighton's performance, and it would have been obviously a great bonus for them if Brighton got to the final. Zerbi's first, not even full season in charge, and he's bringing them to an FA Cup final. That just shows how well they've been doing this season. But yeah, the game for the most part, not a lot of, I guess, standout chances. Both keepers did play very, very important roles. One of my highlights was when Matoma had a chance to go through, played a couple 1-2s, the ball is kind of bouncing between, and then De Gea's clearly going to get to it first, but Matoma slides in regardless, just like how we would, Mac, if we're playing FIFA, and you see that your player's losing the ball, but you just want to slide into the goalie just to get something on it. But another moment that maybe Gio might have stood up for you, what did Weghorst do to that ball when he passed it on to Solly March before his penalty? Because we saw him holding it, maybe kissing it or doing something, and then obviously, as we know, Solly March, unfortunately for him, goes on to miss his crucial 6th or 7th penalty for Brighton, and then Lindelof puts the icing on a cake. What were your thoughts on the penalty shootout?
Look, very tight. Look, it's. And to anyone who's still surprised that De Gea can't make a penalty save, it's not a surprise anymore. Like, don't expect a save. You gotta expect a mistake from the other side. That's all you can really do at this point. If he makes a save, you should be ecstatic. So, I take nothing away from De Gea. I think he did enough in the game to keep Man U in it. So I think they realistically have him to thank. So whatever Weghorst did, little gypsy magic, whatever it may have been. It worked, so I will never blame him for anything. I will never fault him for anything. And just shouts out to a defender, a center back at that, to put away a pen like that, to seal the game. Victor Lindelof, I tip my hat to you as you stay ready to compete, as you have not been getting many starts this year, let alone minutes. So all credit to him this game. I think he played. I think he was definitely one of the better standout United players if you had to pick one.
He took his pen notes from Harry Maguire in the Euro finals. Exact same pen.
Hey,
great pen.
Harry Maguire, oddly enough, good pen taker, but thank God he wasn't in for the majority of the game. So, a win's a win. You kind of have to take those tough ones and kind of move on. You're going to have to face City, which is obviously not ideal at this point, losing your top 2 defenders in Rafa Varane and Lisandro Martinez. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting in terms of who Man City kind of put out. They typically put out sort of like a B-ish lineup. They never put out their top A lineup, as they have other things to worry about, bigger fish to fry. So yeah, I think anything's possible. It's a final. It's a great. It's kind of great to see. Was going to be great to see how Ten Hag kind of throws everything at the kitchen sink at them, to see how he can kind of secure this trophy.
Yeah, for sure. We know. Well, Love, great job on your sort of penalty. Don't know if you're going to be playing that cup final though. And so we'll see. That being said, the cup final, as we know, and as Gio mentioned, is Man City against Man U, a game where it could be the decider for if Man City. Well, Champions League final I think takes place after that, but this is one of the trophies that Man City will need to complete that glorious treble that they're looking for. And so Man U potentially could ruin that party. It's a cup final, anything could happen. And my question to you, Mac, is what are the chances that Man U players are out there on the pitch, not necessarily looking to win, but maybe looking to get some rough tackles in for those Man City players? Could that be an option?
If that cup final occurs and Casemiro and Manchester United are losing that game, if Casemiro does not get a red card, I think he should be deported. That's I'm going to use those words from Manchester United, because that should be the job, right? Is where you don't want this Manchester City team to get a treble, because is it the 99 iconic Manchester United treble winning team, and if Man City are in the position to do the exact same thing, I would argue this is probably, and will go down as probably the best English Premier League team of all time. It is very well in that conversation, and you don't want your local rivals to be there. So you shouldn't want them to supplant you. So okay, fine, we may lose this game, but you're not winning the one that's coming up. That should be their game plan. That should be their thought process. That's just me as a cynical, fan trying to hope for plan for the worst. At that point, Man City could theoretically have the Premier League wrapped up and be in the Champions League final. So you should be doing everything you can to prevent that. In all actuality, even in some aspects, I know Gio, you may not like this, even superseding the fact if you're even winning the game, you should still go ahead and do that, because there should be priorities here. Okay, protect your history. Okay, that's what the focus should be. That should be the mentality. Is if you're a real Manchester United player, real Man U fan, don't care about the result, care about the injuries you can inflict to make sure the trouble doesn't occur. Okay. Again, that's it. Even I would argue sometimes if you're winning, but if you're losing, that should be the whole halftime talk. If Haaland comes in and scores a hat trick in the first 10 minutes, which would anyone be surprised? No. But if that does occur, the halftime talk should be, okay, guys, we lost this game. How many bones can we break on the other team, and who can do it? Okay, this is when Harry Maguire earns him Bizarre Man. Okay, that's when he should come in. And by the way, it would have been hilarious if in the last minute of the previous game against Brighton, if Harry Maguire came on as a penalty substitute for the last minute to be he lines up to be the first five. That would have been one of the greatest moments of my life. Just getting the messages from group chats of what the hell is going on. But that's an aside. Overall, like I said, Ray, I think you're spot on. I love the tee of up with that question, and I would love to see it happen. I hope no one gets injured. I don't like seeing injuries.
Of course, we don't want to see that.
Never. But even though I don't bet like both of you do, you gambling addicts, if there was a way for me to bet injuries in that game, I'm taking the over so quickly. Sorry. Yes.
But yeah, Gio, same question to you. How do you see that? We'll preview more, but just initial reactions to that FA Cup final.
I just think it's gonna be. Look, it's gonna be tough for Man U, but again, I just really wish this was a final played in Spain. So, it just guarantee me that Casemiro can not get a card. So, had this final been played in Spain, we already know Casemiro's not getting a card, but it's played in at Wembley, so he's probably going to pick up a card here and there. Hopefully not a red. But I think if he's in there making tough challenges, and Pep kind of understands, we got to preserve our bodies, it might be tough for City. So hopefully Scott McTominay is good to go pick up a couple of cards here and there. Some bone crunching tackles. I'd love to see a Tyler Malacia, same thing. Would love to see some bone crunching tackles and then come off. Fred as well. Come on, boys. Mac's not wrong.
not to say that there needs to be injuries, but they just have to feel you. You know, they have to. You have to make sure that they know you're there. So, and then given the history, Rashford can put a fantastic one away, and you kind of park the bus from there and kind of sail off to the sunset, hopefully. But again, Man City's B lineup is equally as good as any starting lineup in the Prem, so it's going to be a tough matchup.
So I want to ask you, Gio, and you, Ray, your opinion. So if there were to be a straight red tackle, not an accumulation of fouls, but let's say straight red, like Sunday league tackle, right? I want you to pick the victim and the perpetrator. Okay, if you're a Manchester United fan, what is the dream situation? Who is the perpetrator? In all likelihood, going to be, and who do you want them to take out? Because if you could pick one for me, I'll give you my answer. It would probably be KDB, because I feel like if I'm tackling Haaland, I'm more likely to get hurt. I'll be honest with you, and I probably won't hurt him that much. But I feel like I could, you could hurt KDB. Like he seems a little bit softer.
Yeah.
Just me.
Yeah.
Well, would you guys as well?
I agree.
And Casemiro is the obvious perpetrator, or is there a difference? Is there a different suspect?
Has to be.
No. I'm trying to see Fred get in there.
What is Fred going to do? How much damage is Fred going to do?
Hey, bro. Hey, man, it's a red card challenge. Obviously, it's going to be a dirty play, so it doesn't have to be. Size doesn't have to come into a factor here. It can be a dirty challenge, regardless of the fact. And if KDB comes out injured, he comes out injured. That may not be the intent, but that may be the result. So,
here's my shout for who it should be. It should be the legend himself, Wout Weghorst, right? If you want to go put your name down as a Man U legend, that's how you do it. You're not going to score goals, brother. You need to cause some injuries, cause some havoc, and you're a big enough body to accidentally hurt somebody.
Play to your abilities, basically.
Play to your abilities.
Like an accidental shoulder or elbow, because you're like, hey, I'm just going up for header. I would not be surprised.
Would not be shocked. Not for a second.
Could see it happen. Honestly, if it's not KDB, I think maybe Rodri. Their lone holding midfielder, very vital to their play style. So, hey, either one of those. You're going to need to obviously take a couple more players out to really handicap this Man City team, but I think those would be my first choice. But regardless, guys, we're not really condoning any violent acts on the pitch. So let's wrap the podcast up here, guys. We're going to conclude for today. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @house_of_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Thursday, when we review some of the midweek action and also preview some of the weekend's Premier League games. So on that note, thank you, Mac.
Come on, you Gunners.
Thank you, Gio.
Come on, City. Just win the league.
Such a City fan, bro. Oh my God.
And see you guys.